Hello and welcome to another episode of the DigiTeacher. This week I'm privileged to be talking to Yasmin Motani, and we share our thoughts about the state of computer education in South Africa. Hello, today I'm speaking to Yasmin Motani, and she's head of CAT and IT related subjects at St. David's in Johannesburg. So hi Yasmin, it's great to be able to talk to you after such a long time not seeing you.
Hi, Dorian. So good to see you. It's been forever.
And I'd like to talk to you about the direction that computing in South Africa, computing education in South Africa is taking, where you see it going, how you read the whole situation, especially
Yeah.
with the new curriculum coming in or not coming in, depending on who we speak to. But
Yeah.
let's start maybe with this, what we should be teaching in computing. Should all students be doing some aspect of computing? And is kind of CAT versus IT the right direction? What do you think?
Look, I think that all students need to be doing some sort of computing because if you're needing to study or you need to, just to make you employable, you need to be doing some sort of computer skills. And I don't know if you know that St. David's has just opened up a campus in Alex. And we had an Olympiad with those students, and for some of them, just to turn on the computer took an entire period. So when you can't do that, you can't do simulations, you can't do emails, you can't do research, you can't do a Word document. And one of my colleagues as well says that what brought her into CAT was seeing people that she studied with not being able to submit an assignment as a PDF. So they got penalized at university. So you're adding an additional barrier if you don't have computer literacy skills, which I think is just completely unfair in a society like ours.
Mm.
How
Absolutely.
do you see it? Because I know you also have well, you've got your the program that you have with your inner city schools.
Look, I think for a huge number of students in South Africa,
Mm,
basic computer literacy has been denied them. Their schools don't have computers, or if they do, they're locked up in the principal's office.
yeah,
Or they've been given computers and then those computers have been stolen. Or you have computer rooms without internet, which is what I had before going to Redeem.
yeah,
I had quite a good computer lab actually, but it had no internet. So I had to download websites onto stiffy disks. It was back in those days, and
wow,
bring them in and set up a server, and then put
yeah,
links in, and or the worst case scenario, the computers themselves just don't work.
yeah.
Um, so I think it's absolutely schools need to be able to teach computing, and I believe in computer applications technology, CAT, as a subject.
Yeah, I think it should be a compulsory subject. I love IT, but CAT is so essential to everything that well, it's so essential. But Dorian, you raise an interesting point there with schools and either not having the infrastructure, not having the skills. You have computers, they're locked away, you don't have internet. Sorry, and I know with your schools in your more rural areas or even just outside of Joburg, to try and get fiber in Alexandra Township is been something that St. David's has been grappling with for quite a long time. So these computers are donated by wonderful donors, but locked away because nobody can use them. Or there's no time, or that's the other thing with the curriculum is you've got to focus on your maths and English and first additional language, as you do in any school. And where do you have the time for luxuries like digital literacy?
Yeah. I mean, for some people, I think the answer they've turned to sort of coding clubs in the afternoon,
Mm.
and that kind of thing. But that's more
Yeah.
to do, with coding. Do you believe everyone should be learning to code just
No.
on top of computer literacy?
Maybe if you can, if you have the time to do it. But again, where's the time and what is the thing that is more valuable? So you've got this coding and robotics curriculum, and please don't get me wrong, and I love coding and robotics. It's my field, my interest, my speciality. But the thing that becomes the essential component is definitely the applications. And we take it so for granted that kids can do these things. We assume that kids are amazing because they can do TikToks and they're whizzes on cell phones. But there's definitely this myth of digital native. We've got students that don't know how to turn on a computer. They turn on the monitor and nothing happens. With the things that we take for granted as well, we know this because it makes sense, like the difference between using data and being on a Wi-Fi network. Children don't understand this because they didn't grow up with it. There are a lot of barriers if you don't have basic computer skills.
Yeah, I mean, and quite apart from being able to do spreadsheets and things like that,
Yes, yes, yes. Well,
which
even
makes them
resource
employable.
projects.
Yeah,
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 just we've got someone at St. David's who's doing an online university degree, but doesn't know how to use a computer. So it's very exclusionary.
okay, yeah, yeah,
Oh, coding is fantastic. It does have a lot of computational thinking. It builds on that. It's very good for maths. It's very good for, yeah, well, very good for maths. But it's a luxury, I think, more than a necessity. It's very
yeah,
good, but a lot of schools can't afford that.
yeah. I mean that's how I read the situation. We have to
Yeah,
have basic computer literacy in place,
yeah,
and then we can start looking at coding and robotics and
I
all the rest of
agree.
it.
But then you also have
Mm,
all these ed techpreneurs who come in and say, "Oh, we'll do coding and robotics," and you build this weird robot that nobody understands
yeah,
on this
yeah,
microchip that nobody understands with this breadboard that nobody knows how to plug anything into. And when it's time for coding, they say, "Here's the code, copy and paste it," and the kids don't actually learn anything. So what are you teaching?
yeah.
Then do woodwork or arts and crafts. I don't know. It
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense.
What do you think about of all these unplugged programs?
I think Unplugged, there's definitely a place for Unplugged. Again, it's teaching you the thinking, which is the root of coding. I'm a big proponent of not doing line-based coding until you're in grade 10 because the semicolons and brackets are enough to put everyone off. In fact, I've got many students who tell me that they hated it in grade 7 and they still hate coding now because of the block against the line-based coding. Um, I think Unplugged does have a place, especially in South Africa where electricity has been unstable. Like you say, schools don't have computers or the computers have been stolen. It's more about the thinking. And you've done the Computer Olympiad, I'm sure we've done it together, where you see a lot of the things that they ask for is just basically computational thinking, problem solving, having the grit to not give up when you see something complex. I think that's more important, really.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with that. D for a long time, universities didn't recognize CAT as a subject in
Yeah.
terms of gaining points and things. Is that still the case? Do you know?
No, it's not the case anymore because any of the subjects that you do count equally. So if you're doing, it's such a funny selection process actually, because if you want to do a degree in computer science, you don't need to have done IT, but you need to have done physical science. So it's really bizarre how universities work. And also with IT being a bit harder than computer applications technology, you stand a better chance if you get let's say a B in CAT versus a C in IT, because the universities, most of them, look at them the same. The only places where a lot of them might give you a little bit extra is for English, maths, and science. But the rest of them, it's pretty much whatever you take. As I
Yeah.
understand it, my daughter's a matric now, so just going through the application process with her, it's whatever subject flies.
Okay. Is that in all the universities or
For
some of
most
them?
of them, for most of them, I
Okay.
know the important ones are your English, maths, FAL, and science.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
really good to have a higher, it's better to have a higher symbol that gives you a better APS score.
yeah.
They don't look at the subjects as much as they do the symbols, except for the English, maths, science, and FAL.
'Cause I think for a long time, the fact that the universities weren't recognizing CAT really, really
Yeah.
hurt it as a subject getting off the ground.
And there's still that misconception that CAT is it's an easy subject, it's an easy A. And look, I can't talk from the government exams, but I know with the IEB it is incredibly rigorous
Oh,
and quite hard to get a distinction in CAT. It is quite a challenging
mm,
subject, and people think, oh, it's easy. It's not really a subject. I know that the curriculum has been changed over the years to make it a bit harder, but it's quite intensive.
mm. Well, you've got all the theory, and then in many ways, it's that kind of paradox that applying knowledge versus kind of having the knowledge. It's sometimes easier just to have the knowledge, and rather than the additional worry of applying it. Um,
Yeah. Are you talking with regard to CAT?
yeah,
So, Kat, look, when they say computer applications, they're not really talking about applying computers. They're talking about the applications like Word and Excel,
Yeah.
PowerPoint, Access.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that, again, with all of your exams, it's your lower order is 30%, middle order is 40. You still have higher order thinking questions in there. They still have to apply themselves.
Yeah.
It's a good skill. It's a good subject, a good skill for students
Yeah.
to have. I think everybody should do it, honestly. I think it should be compulsory. But they
No,
don't. They don't all do it.
yeah. I'm just thinking. I had endless problems as a teacher with databases,
Yeah.
and, because they have to understand what a database is to be able to, practically put it together,
Mm.
and it seems such a foreign concept to them.
It is a foreign concept because they're not used to working with data. I
Yeah.
like to relate it to things that are practical for them, like you're a student, we have a lot of data on you, we store that in a database, we use queries to get the sort of things that we need.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think with everything with computers, you've really got to make it practical for students. Otherwise, you're right, it's so abstract, they don't grasp it.
Yeah. Whereas in some ways, coding is something I don't know. Once you got the syntax and you've got
Yeah,
some, in some ways it's slightly easier. I don't know.
it is.
I just found I had kids who could do JavaScript no problem, and then you'd say,
Yeah,
okay, you're doing that in computer club during break time. Now, why can't you put this database together?
yes,
What is actually holding you back? And yeah, it
yeah.
was a nut I never managed to crack in
So
some
I think in
cases.
grade 10 coding it can be a bit concrete because if I don't know, if it is a student, then they get a lower cost. It's a pretty basic if then or
Yeah,
yeah, so that's grade 10. But come grade 11 and 12, you start looking at objects in classes, again, something that's so difficult for them to grasp. And again, if you go from, if you live through the Turbo Pascal that then went to Delphi, that then went to Java, you kind of understand object orientation. For these kids, you try and explain to them, we have an object instead of a linked array, and they don't understand because they didn't go through that sort of journey. So I think in grade 10, absolutely, it can be quite straightforward, but as you get to 11 and 12, it becomes far more abstract.
yeah. No, true.
Mhm.
So
The
so where do
theory
you
is very similar. The theory in both of the subjects actually is very
yeah,
similar, which
yeah,
is good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you see the computing generally being headed? Do you think the country is going to be able to get enough equipment and, more importantly, maybe enough teachers in place to be able to roll out a kind of computing for everyone approach?
I doubt it. And I say I doubt it because I work in a very privileged environment, as do you. We work in independent schools in South Africa, and the independent schools are struggling.
Mm.
So you're sitting with old computers that are quite expensive. And I know in government, obviously, they're government subsidized, but you don't have teachers that are able to teach the curriculum because the teacher training is not sufficient. You can have someone coming out of a 4-year BEd degree not able to teach IT or CAT. And I suppose that's why your high schools prefer to have someone with an undergrad in their subject and then a PGCE. People that study IT seldom go into teaching. I know there are a number of vacancies right now that are open vacancies for schools because they're just not able to hire people, or you have schools that hire people that they wouldn't ordinarily because there's such a shortage. And then you have a good teacher come in and emigrate to Australia or New Zealand. It's really tricky. I don't understand how, and perhaps it's just my own bias, when your private schools can't get it right, how your government schools with significantly fewer resources and less parent buy-in, or not parent buy-in, parent resources, are going to manage that. It's
So,
important, but I don't know how you would implement it, especially when you don't have the infrastructure.
yeah. I wonder if the solution isn't maybe to have, I don't know, the kind of mobile bus that moves around. So you have a computer lab in a bus, and
Mm.
you send the bus to the area, and the kids go in once a week or whatever, and at least get some exposure, some.
Yeah, well, that's actually a very interesting idea because you could get away with that once a week. And if you do it at a grade, and sometimes it's better to do it at your junior grades, especially grade 8 and 9, because not every student is going to want to do CAT or IT. And the ones that do maybe don't have space because they're really passionate about other subjects and they just can't fit it in. I think the place to get that digital literacy right is by that senior phase. Intermediate and senior is so important, the grade 4 to 7 space.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about the being able to use applications, but the big thing that we forget or often don't talk about enough is the social implications. We're talking about safe cell phone use, your digital footprint. A lot of them don't understand that whatever you do online is there forever, or the implications for some of the stupid things that kids do on a phone. I always tell them the difference between you and me is when I was your age and being ridiculous, there wasn't a phone with someone able to capture that moment forever.
Yeah.
They don't realize it. Yeah. In grade 4, that's when they start using phones excessively. And yeah,
And that's where most of the problems seem to be.
I think so. Grade 4
Yeah.
to 9, to me, is very problematic.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on what the system is and where it should be going?
I'm not too. Yeah, I have no idea. I think in many ways it's an insoluble problem until we have electricity in
Yeah.
place, until we have I think enough teacher education. I think there should be. I don't know if the tertiary institutions are massively investing in teacher training specifically in computer education, but I don't see many signs of that. I mean, a few years ago at WITS, it was almost non-existent as far as I could see. That's just one institution, but maybe things have changed recently, but yeah, I don't know.
I know when I was studying, it was a compulsory module in the first semester, was that you had to do some sort of computer or Word, Excel. I think it was Word, Excel, PowerPoint. I don't remember if Access was in there, but you needed to do some fairly advanced stuff on that. That needs to be, I think, part of every tertiary qualification. Look, with the universities, at least they have labs.
Yeah.
And they have security and the resources that you need. And perhaps that's just something some of them do, but I don't know how a school like UNISA is supposed to be able to do that when your students are online.
Well, I mean, the curious thing about UNISA also is that UNISA hasn't fully gone online. They seem to still have a kind of distance approach, which involves booklets and
Yes.
rather than online classes. I mean,
you're right, actually, because they just send you everything you need and you've just got to submit an assignment. So that's all you need to do is submit 2 assignments a semester from when I was there, and that was that. Write your exam and you were done.
Yeah.
You'd think that
I
they'd
mean,
be doing it well.
Well, maybe that's a reflection of the fact that so few people have access to internet or computing resources. So they still have to go with the kind of more old-fashioned model.
It's this big university, and they cater to, what is it, 800,000 students at a time? 200,000, I can't remember. A few 100,000 students at a time.
Yeah. But it's an indication of even a university like that doesn't seem able or confident enough to fully go online, that maybe that's, how a school supposed to manage at all.
Look, I know that coding and robotics became quite a buzzword, and this thing that, I said you were doing for ages, but not shouting out about it, but it became a buzzword just before the pandemic, where a lot of schools were trying to do this, and parents are so impressed when you have open days and you take out these balls, robotic balls, these spheros and drones and the VR goggles, and parent day ends and you lock them back up in the cupboard for, I don't know, keep 240,000 Rand worth of goggles away, or spheros and robots, and they get put away, but it's impressive. We don't really use them, but what is it that we're teaching when we're using those? And who can do them? Who is trained to use that?
It makes this faddism makes me absolutely mad, because drones, really?
Yes.
I mean,
because they're fun.
They're fun.
Drones because they're fun.
And the goggles.
And the goggles.
So you can get seasick and see a picture of a human heart beating, way in the distance while you keel over and die.
But But so sadly, that's what your parents buy into. That's what they want.
Yeah.
And then there was a big push towards EdTech during the pandemic, and then there was a lot of pushback afterwards. And
Yeah.
I think people also confuse the terms. They confuse the digital coach that helps teachers use technology. They confuse that with the coding and robotics side of it. They confuse that with digital literacy. And it's very difficult to find someone that can do all of those things. It's
Yeah.
almost as though you need someone that can train teachers, or teachers get trained at a certain time. And then you have someone that teaches digital literacy and someone who teaches coding. And to advertise that all in one role, I think, is unfair because you might have someone that's really good with technology and applications, but really is not confident with coding. And you're asking this person to be this sort of, what is that cure for everything that goes wrong in the school? You be this person that's going to fix everything wrong with education and teachers and curriculum
Yeah.
and impress the parents with drones. It's a bit unfair.
Yes, and write report comments.
And write report comments. And God forbid you use the technology to generate those, because then it is so impersonal.
Yeah. So on that topic, do you see AI as playing any kind of role in education? Should we
I
be?
would love it.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on your rest of your question.
No, should it be banned up until a certain stage, and then kids taught how to use it, or how do you read the situation?
Look, I love using AI. I think it's been really game changing. Look, oftentimes when you tell an adult, please write a report or something, and I've had people ask me, can you please write this proposal? And I say, okay, fine. Can you give me an example of what it should look like? And then you get an example and you say, okay, I know what I need to do. If you tell someone to write a speech in grade 5 and you say, here's an example of what you need to do, it makes it a lot easier for that child to know better what they need to do. Obviously, it does become tricky when it's used. Sure, kids can cheat with AI very easily. I know the IAB's position is they must use AI but reference it like they would any other source. I hope that it does. My boys use it. Sorry, I had two thoughts there. I hope that it does become something that is used because, like Google, it can just raise the education a bit higher, raise everything a bit higher. I know that my boys use it when they're struggling to understand a concept. They use AI and say, what is this? Summarize it. If you're teaching, you can say, explain this concept using a rugby analogy, and ChatGPT is very good at that. Pop in a document and say, summarize this, put it in bullet points. It does become very good for your teachers and students alike. And I'll seldom now send out an email or write a report comment without popping it into AI to check for errors.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm very much conflicted here because I think we
Yes.
should be learning to use large language models as a tool. But I have this feeling that those large language models are a little bit smoke and mirrors. That, I mean, the way their accuracy rate is not that high. So if you can guarantee that the data it's trained on is high quality data, then I think there's a possibility you've got a really powerful tool there. But as things stand, where it's been trained on God knows what, it's got a lot of models that it's are very poor quality.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that maybe we should be making sure that kids have an ability to write an essay before they even try to use a tool like that. But then at a certain stage, we should be introducing it and teaching them how to use it and how to reference it and so on, because they will be in a world where that is done. But I don't know when that age is. Is it 13? Is it a little bit older? Who knows? We need lots of research on that, I think.
The problem is that kids use them before teachers cotton on to that it's a thing.
Yeah.
So they have all sorts of ways to generate it in ChatGPT and pop it into Callbot, and then the plagiarism checker doesn't pick it up.
Yeah.
So they know this before we know it.
Yeah.
Which becomes tricky.
Yeah, the plagiarism checkers are going to be always one step behind.
Interestingly, there was plagiarism checkers are picking up things as AI when they have not been generated in AI. And I'll give you an example. There was a matric English examination that was written under exam conditions, and it was an essay question that was then marked and popped into AI, and AI said this was 58% generated by artificial intelligence. So there's a lot of false positives with your AI.
Yeah.
Plagiarism checkers they're not that great.
Yeah, and the false positives would be what would stop me from even using
Yeah.
because if you accuse a student, then you have to
Yes.
live with the consequences of having done that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's anywhere near accurate enough to be able to stake your credibility as a teacher
Yes.
on making a claim like that.
Some of your students, you know that
Oh yeah,
this was definitely not generated by you.
yeah,
And then I think you can, with some confidence, compare it to something they've written previously and what's happened now,
yeah.
or do it under different conditions. I would like to see AI used a lot more in grading work,
Okay.
because I think there's a lot of value in kids getting that instantaneous feedback. So what I love about using a Microsoft form or Google form is that they can get their results back immediately with feedback, and they learn immediately. Because if you have, I know at most schools your turnaround time is 1 week. In 1 week's time, they don't really care unless you force them to go through the memo, and they don't really care. And you can assess more frequently, and not assessing for assessment's sake, but I mean, you know how many students you teach. If you're teaching across 6 classes in 2 grades, I'm doing the same 6 classes in 2 grades with the grade 8s and 9s. To be able to assess them all the time is really difficult because there's so many of them. If you can have something that would allow you to grade code, for instance, you can see at the end of any lesson where your students are versus where you want them to be, and use that to more as your formative feedback.
Yeah.
I would like that, especially code.
Yeah. In terms of summative feedback, I don't think
No.
it would be appropriate because
Yes.
God knows how it might get it wrong. But
Yes.
yeah,
Or even something that teachers then moderate thereafter, but you always run the risk that teachers will not moderate thereafter because it's tedious. But yeah, formative, absolutely. I think it has a massive role to play.
yeah. And in terms of generating ideas and things like that, have you used it in that sense at all? So rather than write an essay or in use in writing an essay, generate some ideas on ChatGPT and then go away and do something else, not involving writing, maybe.
Yeah, I try to not write anything if I can help it.
Yeah.
So no, I haven't used it for that. I have used it to generate text for Word documents. So I did a test for a group of girls that I was teaching on, and the theme I went with is the Barbie movie. So I asked AI to generate something about, well, I actually used a journal article and said, use this article to generate an essay. And then that's the essay that the girls have to format, but not really. Not really anything to generate anything for me. It's more checking. Another very valuable, I think very good use of AI is find the error in the code. So in IT, it's find the error in this code, and students do that so that they can see where their mistakes are.
Okay.
You use it for generating ideas.
No, most of my students are doing block coding.
Okay.
So difficult to run through an AI checker.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, like I don't know if you use code.org, but for me that's quite AI because it tells students what to do, and if they haven't gotten it right, it says you're not quite there yet. Obviously for little code snippets, but not for long programs.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it built into programs like that.
Yeah.
A lot of work seems to be going into creating kind of tutor chatbot things to kind of assist students with. Do you
I'm
see a
not a
future
fan.
in that? Yeah.
I don't, because if you look at the students that need tuition, they're the ones that struggled a little bit when the teacher who's trained to mediate that content did it the first time, and now you're going to ask that student to take ownership of and try and read that coming from a tutor online. I don't see that working unless you're in a school that's really struggling with teachers. And
It's
yeah,
already
if you
got.
don't have a science teacher, maybe the bot is better than not having a teacher at all. but I don't see a place for it. I think your teachers, you know your students, and you can see that sort of, when you're explaining something and they look at you all confused, and then, oh, as a teacher, you can see that and you can explain until you get to that, oh, I get it point. What is your chatbot going to do?
Yeah.
Also,
Make
your
things
teacher knows
uncomfortable.
where the teacher knows where the student needs to get to at the end of it. A bot doesn't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're learning language learning models, and this is where we think that AI is so fantastic and it's going to take over the world. It is in the name. It's a language learning model. Basically, it's trained on a whole lot of language, and it's going to spit out that language as well. So coding, absolutely. It's trained on Java. It can do that. It can write you an essay, but it can't think.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can't think. It
Um,
can't mediate. It can't scaffold. Yeah, I don't think it has a place there.
yeah, I think that one can see online at the moment loads and loads of podcasts coming up, kind of exposing the way companies have raised a lot of financing off of promises of AI, and then the AI is basically faked. And
Yeah.
there's kind of sweatshops in India or whatever, with people
Wow.
looking at cameras rather than the
Wow.
a proper AI algorithm at
Yeah,
work, which is terrifying. I mean,
it is. I think
um,
I think it's powerful but overrated. I think AI is probably the new Google,
yeah,
but I don't think it's gonna make that much of a difference in education.
and that's another thing that terrifies me is the way that Google is being replaced by AI. So
Yeah,
instead of getting a list of web pages that you could go and find information
yeah,
on, more and more the pressure is, well, AI is telling you that this is the answer, and it's actually hiding the actual results from you.
mm.
But anyway, I mean, all of that aside, back to South Africa's very real
Oh, South
problems
Africa's
with
education.
education
Yeah.
system.
I think our CAPS curriculum is fantastic. I think it's world class. If I look at what we cover in CAPS, it's phenomenal. But that implementation is always going to be problematic as long as, and I think your bigger problem is first your teachers and then the schools. Because if you've got an excellent or master teacher in a school and you tell master teacher, listen, we don't have computers, that teacher finds a way.
Yeah,
But when you've got teachers who actually don't know themselves what they need to be doing, how on earth? And you
yeah,
can't raise your standard too much of your, oh, Darren, it's what came first, the chicken or the egg. If you raise your standard of your teacher training programs, you now exclude a whole bunch of teachers that could be teachers. And then you have more schools without teachers. I don't know how to fix that problem with technology.
yeah. Um, yeah, I agree with you totally, and I'm kind of left speechless by what to do there actually, because you can think of very limited solutions. Like,
Yeah,
for example, if the problem is there's no resources, then take the resources to the schools
yeah,
and kind of drive around. And
yes,
it's like in the old days they had the science labs. Schools didn't have science labs, so you put a science lab in a bus and you went around and you could do the practical
yeah,
demonstrations. Well, maybe we could do similar things with computers,
yeah.
but how many schools are you actually able to reach? And yeah,
It's a start. And if you think about a bus going, but I mean also, sorry, that bus is going to be maybe reaching what you can get to 10 schools in a week, but that's one class. You actually need to be at a school for a day. Maybe one bus could reach 5 schools. I'm not sure. Um, I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know how to, I don't know that you can fix it that way. But it's a
yeah,
start. You need some sort of start, right? At least if you put it in the curriculum, you're telling school management teams, listen, you need someone that can do this.
yeah,
And as the demand goes up, then maybe you start getting teachers that are able to do it. And a lot
yeah,
of teachers, most teachers can put on a computer, open a Word document, save it on their desktop, and then save another one on their desktop, and. But it's a start. It's a
yeah.
start.
Then forget their password,
Yeah,
forget where they saved the file.
but they knew they had a password. I think a lot of teachers can do it. Look, there's also the problem that the most computer literate teacher becomes the IT teacher, but it's a start.
But
You
you
know
need
the
those teachers
difficulty.
teaching science and English
You
and
do,
history
you
and
do.
art and yeah.
You see, the difficulty as well with IT teaching is, look, for most of us, we did English and maths and science, and I tutor some students with science, so I was able to teach science as well for grade eights. And
Yeah.
I said, well, how do you know how to do this? Well, I know how to do this because I did it at school. Same with maths. I could maybe get away with teaching a grade 9 maths class because I did it at school, so I know what maths is. But for most teachers, they did not study IT. There was not CAT when I was at school. Maybe there was and I didn't know it. I did IT at school, so I remember how to teach the concepts because I remember my teacher standing at the board and teaching me binary. But for a lot of teachers, they don't have a frame of reference.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really tricky.
Yeah.
I know we wanted to talk about the new curriculum coming in for the grade noughts to nines. I mean, how much of that is actually relevant? There's no time. These kids need to learn how to read and write and count. There's very little time. Sorry, not no time. They need to do a first additional language because the universities require it. Why, I don't know, but they require it. So you're taking away from other subjects that are maybe more important for tertiary. Um, and some of it is just so, let's put it in there so that we can look fancy. If you look at the grade North curriculum, I mean, what do they need to know is how to hold an iPad, wash their hands before they hold an iPad, and make a password login. There's not much to do, but then you've got these very complicated concepts coming in at grade 6 and 7 level, and you wonder why. What is this for?
Yasmin, I'd like to end on a positive note. So, is there is there any ray of sunshine at the end, light at the end of the tunnel?
I think the government saying all kids need to know how to do this is a very positive thing. I think that's a very good thing. You're saying it's important, but
Yeah,
I think perhaps coding and robotics was not what should have been made compulsory. The applications and just being able to use it.
use a computer. Yeah,
Yeah. And there are schools that have made significant progress.
yeah. Well,
That was a bit doom and gloomy, hey?
yeah.
I think next podcast we do in summer. Sorry, my bad.
No, my bad. I think it is a fairly gloomy situation,
Yeah.
all told, and many countries are struggling with this. We're
Yes.
not alone.
Yes.
But I think because our future is going to be so technological, we really need um, to have people coming out of our education systems with a sense of agency
Yeah.
that they can cope in the world,
Yes.
rather than they're just stuck with all we can do is like, share, and consume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dorian, I actually do have a positive that I can end on. When I was in matric, there were 3 girls in IT.
Okay.
Now you sit with so many more girls than boys doing sciences, which I think is phenomenal.
So
I
girls
think
in
it's
STEM,
fantastic.
yay,
Girls in
hurrah.
STEM, they're winning the race.
Okay. On that positive note, Yasmin, thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Dorian. Lovely
agreeing
seeing
to
you.
talk to me, and lovely to see you again.
Yeah, you
And I
keep
hope
well.
I hope we can do it again sometime, and
Yes,
um,
in summer.
in summer, and a bit more
Yeah.
positive in approach.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please like and share and subscribe and leave comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the state of education in South Africa and in your country. Bye for now, and see you next week.